Whether you've been following Final Fantasy XI and its updates in recent years or not, you still might be interested in the most recent one this November, where they introduced the mastery level system. If you haven't watched my previous videos on it, please do. It's fun watching me kind of freak out and nerd out about the latest update. But in a casual, unannounced November update, and I say unannounced, they did give us the usual preview a few days before, but not like lead up with tweets and social media and articles saying like big stuff coming in November. No, this was essentially a normal November drop. They introduced the mastery level system, which allows us to level beyond, once again, our level cap once we are a job master with capped job points, earning mastery levels, which we gain in a very similar vein to the original leveling format in terms of overall XP. The initial level takes 2,500 exemplar points, and it's just like the numbers seem kind of similar. And it drops you down to, you start, for instance, I was a master level summoner, drops you down to 0, and then you go to 1, 2, all the way up to currently the cap of 20. Big deal is it offers up stat bonuses as well as skill bonuses, increasing your overall strength by what is essentially kind of like a level each time you get a mastery level, and also allowing you to increase the level of your sub job for the first time ever beyond half of your main job level for every 5 mastery levels. So for the current cap of 20 mastery levels, we can get up to level 53 sub job, which is kind of nuts. And that's just a summary for anybody who hasn't been following. Like I said, we go into the details, the wording of the update, etc. But now that we've spent some time with it over the past week, I've gotten a few mastery levels under my belt. I've leveled my sub job up to 50 instead of 49, which is weird to see. I want to talk about my experience so far, my hopes, and how this changes how I view 11. Let's get into it. So if you haven't played Final Fantasy XI in a while and you're kind of annoyed that I'm touching on this so many videos in a row, sorry, it's like a huge update. This is crazy news. The fact that this wasn't a bigger deal, I think in itself speaks volumes, because this is not a small change. This fundamentally changes everything about our current level of strength in Vana'diel, the caps, the average, all of that, as well as the future path for what our growth in Vana'diel looks like. It's nuts. It's huge for Final Fantasy XI in its current state. But what does it feel like? So, just to kind of get it off my chest, we'd sort of like theorized based on some of the wording of the patch notes before we got to touch on this. Things like the level sync for master levels, what they might be trying to achieve here. And for years we've hoped and dreamt that they would introduce a system that allows us to kind of level through Vana'diel again. And that's not really here yet. But what I will say is that this feels awesome. It's so weird to hop on and see in the link shell 4 people of different levels. One is master level 15. The other is master level 5. The other is master level 2. Somebody else is still 99. But watching that growth, and this is partially because it is so new, but there's something about hopping into Final Fantasy XI and all you see is somebody who's 99, sub 49, probably master level, not master level, job master with the stars and all that. It seems sort of stagnant. Yes, people are growing in terms of their overall skills, merits, job points in ways that you can't quite see, but just like looking at the searching of the town, there's like a handful of people that are under 99 that are leveling another job for a week or so, trying to get that up to 99, or have just come back to the game and they're experiencing, you know, a different path than what most of the players are on. But a lot of players have been 99, have been mastered of a job for a long time now. And it makes the game feel sort of, dead's the wrong word, but stagnant. It makes it feel stagnant because you look around, everybody's capped, nobody's growing. And all of a sudden, we hop into a party and I look at my own lake shell and I see that everybody's at different levels. They're different stages. They're all in periods of growth. And I guess if we could see where people were at with job points, maybe that would have felt that way too. Where you look at my blue mage and you're like, oh, he's got like 1,400 job points. Like he's doing all right, but he's not there yet. And somebody else is capped. Like maybe we would have felt that. But that's the whole important aspect of presentation in a system like this, is it can make something that is seemingly kind of monotonous, like a general grind. There's nothing too crazy about it, but introduces that freshness of like all of a sudden it sort of feels like we're leveling again. I'm watching people's sub jobs go from 49 to 50 to 51, and we're like level syncing in parties. It was so weird to hop into a party and there were 4 of us and we got 2 trusts. 2 people were level 49 sub, 1 was 50 and 1 was 51. That reminded me so much of way back in the day when you're looking for a party member and you're like, okay, we've got 2 48s, a 50 and a 51. We can't go too much higher because like a 52 would ruin the XP for the 48s. I mean, way before level sync. And it wasn't like that. We obviously level synced the master down to whoever was lowest to increase the XP gain that we all got. But the feeling was there. It was back of that concept of like, oh, we're at different stages and that affects how much XP we get. So we have to make sure we kind of balance it out. It's a thought process, not just this mindless attack of job points, stocking them up, not feeling like you're growing at all, and then heading back to the auction house or the Mog Safe to Mog Safe, your Mog house to feed those points away and get the rewards. We were watching each other level in the party, and those levels were, nothing huge because it's every 5 levels that you get, another tier of the sub job. And it's gonna be a while before those drastically change how we can explore Vanadil. Right now, there are a couple big ones. Kiraga 3 available for White Mage sub is huge. Super Jump opens up some unique opportunities with Dragoon sub, but for the most part, nothing too crazy. I think Dark Knight might have a little bit more viability than it did before. It was already pretty strong. Point is, it's all changing live as you're playing. It's how partying used to feel, and it's awesome. The other big deal that I'd hoped, but I wasn't positive. One thing that was always interesting with job points is the amount of XP you get from an Apex mob capacity points doesn't go down the more job points that you earn, because your level isn't changing. The game doesn't recognize that you have more job points and suddenly decrease the amount that you get. It's actually the opposite, where you get capacity point bonuses further into your job point rewards, which is great for kind of smoothing out that grind and making the end of it go a lot faster than the start. But at the same time, it's kind of a weird concept in terms of how we used to level in Vanadil, where it's like you'd level up and you'd get to a point where you're not earning enough experience at the camp you're at, so you've got to go to a harder camp. And yes, it's gonna bog you down for a little bit, but you're gonna get more XP, and then it kind of swings back the other way, where you're suddenly rolling, you're grooving, and you're getting that perfect balance of like, we can kill these just fast enough, we're getting a ton of XP for doing it, and then you level up again and you're like, we're getting a little bit less XP, we're not really killing them that much faster, and then again, you got to change camps. It was a whole process. Job points were not like that. Job points, it's, am I finally strong enough to go to the next camp? So if you were strong enough in terms of gear and the rest of your party makeup to go to the highest experience reward camp, one of the Raknazar, the Hell Zones, at your entry point into 99 as a fresh 0 job points 99, you could go there and earn the most XP that you possibly could, period, in the game, as long as your party can kill those enemies fast enough. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. And there's also nothing stopping you from literally at the end of your grind from killing the easiest Apex mob ever for less capacity points. The number doesn't change based on the difficulty of the enemy versus your own strength. It's just, you want to, as you get stronger, go for the most XP. They give you more XP for the tougher mobs, but I'm looping and I'm rambling, but like that always kind of frustrated me, and I never understood why. It's because there's no growth pattern. You're just kind of like, what can I do? Am I strong enough to do this? It gets me more XP. What they've brought back with the master levels is that now the higher level the Apex mob, the more master level points you get for the level you're at. But as you earn master levels, that value goes down. The exemplar points that you earn decrease, meaning that over time, they are going to have to introduce new camps. We were talking about this. This would be the biggest letdown, because my hope, and I said I was going to talk about my hopes and my dreams. My hopes are that they continue to introduce more camps throughout Vanadil, bringing back that feeling of like growth and exploration as you're leveling up through Vanadil, going from camp to camp to camp to camp, earning more and more points and becoming stronger and stronger, because we kind of lost that with job points. You just kind of go to the best camp you can, you stick it out all the way for 2,300 job points, and that's kind of it. But if they could introduce that growth through different camps again, it'll feel like leveling through the game again, which is going to be awesome. And I hope they do. But based on what we've seen, the XP that we've, some of the people I've talked to are earning at 20 job points, 20 master levels at the new camps that they provided in the Promi zones, for instance, has decreased pretty significantly. And the number of exemplar points that we need to get that next master level go up pretty significantly by 20 compared to like level 1. So if they don't introduce new camps, the grind is just going to get brutal, but not in like a fun or unique way, but just boringly slow. I have to imagine they have more camps planned. It seems like the setup that they've sort of set up, where you level up through the more difficult camps doing the job point grind, and then by the time you get to like the end of that, you could stay at that camp to earn exemplar points, or try to move on to the harder camps in Promi to earn exemplar points at a higher rate if you can kill those, but they're very evasive. But I love the setup. I love how they've brought it all together into this format that feels like it could be leveling again, almost in like a new game plus kind of way. And I think that's what I was talking about in my last video, is the concept of like the new game plus and that introduction into Final Fantasy XI retail as it stands now, if they play their cards right. But what's crazy is how it changes your perspective of Final Fantasy XI in its entirety. For the longest time, I've struggled with the job point grind for a variety of my jobs because it's hard to see what's on the horizon past that grind. Yes, I'll be more powerful. I'll be able to do content that I currently struggle with. I'll be able to support my party in more meaningful ways in some of those tough fights. That's great. But I know that there's nothing beyond that. That's all just the point of getting stronger to be stronger for the fights that can provide me the absolute best gear in the game, to then be slightly stronger. There's no growth into anything. I've reached sort of the tail end. Now, I'm certainly not even close to the power cap of Final Fantasy XI, but that's never been my approach, because like I don't want to be there. I don't want to be the strongest and have this One Punch Man problem of like nothing can beat me. But to be honest, there's not much to fight anyway, and I'm just kind of bored now. It sort of terrifies me. But now that there's this concept that there's more on the horizon, because they don't introduce this kind of power creep without introducing new content. They've already said that the end of the Resurgence storyline next year is going to lead into some kind of content that'll likely require some pretty intense skill level, and in terms of gear and probably the master level system, based on what we've seen so far, which is awesome. So, having said all that, I originally leveled Summoner up to master level, my first to actually master, because I love Summoner and I love what it is capable of in terms of raw, quick output of strength. There's a lot you can do with a master Summoner, even without the absolute best gear in the game. Astral Conduit is nuts. But it's a little weird if you're doing a lot of content. And to be honest, the master level, the mastering that job, I can't finish the sentence, was originally the end of the grind. Now there's a continuing grind, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't know if that's going to be a ton of fun. Summoner can be fun to party with, but to be honest, it's never been my favorite part about the job, even in the 75 era. Partying as Summoner was always kind of weird because the avatar works on its own schedule, and no matter how much you bring down those timers of the blood packs, it's still on its own thing, and you still have to summon the avatar, and that's part of what makes it special and unique, but also kind of frustrating, especially at the speed that everything moves in the game today. So when you're just ripping through stuff, you kind of sit there and you're like, I just wish I didn't have this 20-second timer. It's just kind of frustrating, because everybody else is ripping off weapon skills and magic bursts every 3 to 4 seconds. It's insane. My point being that now that there is more, I'm looking at that being like, okay, is Summoner really the job that I want to be focused on with all this changing? And the other big change, obviously, is the introduction of new sub-job levels, which at level 53 is kind of novel, interesting, but like nothing too crazy. But what about beyond that? We haven't even talked about, I mean, we've theorized, but if they go up to 60 68, 74, 75, 99. That changes everything. So I'm looking ahead to jobs like, okay, who stands to benefit the most or have the most interesting combination with like a much higher sub-job level? And I don't see it being Summoner. Summoner with some crazy, even like let's say like a level 75 sub-job, just doesn't seem like it would change the approach to the job very much. The strength of the job is still going to be tied into the avatars, which is great, but there's not much you can do with the sub-job to increase the strength of those avatars. The benefits of the sub-job that we've always had are utility spells like healing, refresh, and then more recently with the 99 update, convert for Red Mage sub, just to introduce more MP to slam out those avatars. That doesn't mean that a crazy high master level 100 summoner isn't going to be incredibly powerful. I'm sure it will be. I just don't think it's going to change how the job behaves much. I think it's going to play very similarly. So I was looking at that, and I'm looking at like my blue mage is like 14 job points, and that 1400, and that seems like a much more interesting combo of the weird ways that you can introduce sub jobs and like totally change how that plays. And then monk, I think pup has a similar problem. I think a lot of the pet jobs are going to have a weird issue of like, what does it mean to have these crazy high level sub jobs if your strength comes primarily from your pet? And summoner is unique in that way. Pup and beast are both strong in their own right as like just a melee job. Summoner is kind of out there on its own being like, nah, I kind of rely on the avatar. Everything ties back to the avatar. So without having a way to strengthen that avatar, and I don't see a sub job really doing that beyond maybe Corsair sub, but I just doubt that's going to make it more useful than just having more MP with like a Red Mage sub. Anyways, crazy thoughts. All this is looping. I don't even know how long I've been talking. What does it say? It's like 18 minutes. Jeez. Sorry, guys. Long story short, this is the kind of update that gets people excited, myself included, because of the questions it introduced. What is the game going to look like in a year or two? Where are we going to have the most challenges? Where are changes going to be in terms of how we strategize and build our characters? Like, all of that seems like it could change, and that's exciting. The problem with the past few years is no matter how much they introduce like a slightly harder fight or some new gear, it hasn't really felt like it changed how we approached the game. The game was generally the same, and that's kind of sad. Not like in an unexpected way, but like just a stagnation way. The game wasn't evolving, and that's not surprising. A few years ago, they said they weren't going to introduce any more new content, period, in terms of story content, and that's changed. But with all this change, you look at the game and you don't know what's next, and that's so exciting. I think it's a great time to be a fan of Final Fantasy XI. Anyways, guys, I've rambled a lot. Point being, I'm probably changing some of the jobs that I'm focused on, which isn't unique for me. I change the jobs that I'm focused on constantly, but for the first time, not because I'm getting bored, but because I'm more excited about the opportunities with other jobs. What do you guys think? Are you excited about this update? Do you think it's too much? Do you think they're rushing it? Do you think I'm getting too excited about something that hasn't really been put through its paces yet? Because all are possibilities. We could find out in a year that like this is a reckless update that they really did not think through, and they were not prepared for the ramifications. It's all possible. Anyways, keep on the lookout for more videos like this. Definitely subscribe if you haven't to catch up on the later updates as they continue to come, I'm sure. Otherwise, I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace. Oh, I didn't even think about this. Okay, without checking my bazaar.
Car bump.
He's right.
He's right. He's right.
I was gonna say, what drawing did I do in 2003 in the